This is White Coat Investor, podcast number 191, the 10 biggest financial mistakes that doctors make. We're recording this on December 8th. It's going to run on December 31st. Welcome back to the pandemic, it feels like, right? We've been in this for months. I don't know about you, but I'm starting to regularly lose patients to COVID. Had a patient come in that was syncopal this week. Heart rate in his 30s, blood pressure in the 50s, and spent a lot of time trying to resuscitate him, get his blood pressure back up, his heart rate back up, discovered he'd had some sort of a heart attack, also seemed to be septic, and sent him off to the cath lab. Of course, once he's in the cath lab, the coronavirus test comes back positive, and unfortunately, he didn't make it much past the cath lab. Going to the ICU and doing codes periodically now as well on COVID patients. So a lot of you are on the front lines with me. Thanks for what you do. It's not easy, and it's getting real old. But you know what? By the time you hear this, I'm hoping a whole bunch of us have been immunized. This is going to run at the end of the year, and it's been a long year. I'm sure we're all ready to turn the corner and start 2021 on a fresh note. None of us, I think, are going to look back on 2020 as an awesome year. But, here we go into the new year, and I expect it's going to get a whole lot better, and hopefully very quickly for all of us. This particular episode is sponsored by Bob Baiani at DrDisabilityQuotes.com. He's an independent provider of disability insurance planning solutions to the medical community in every state and a longtime White Coat Investor sponsor. He specializes in working with residents and fellows early in their careers to set up sound financial and insurance strategies. If you need to review your disability insurance coverage to make sure it meets your needs, or if you just haven't gotten around to getting this critical insurance in place, contact Bob at DrDisabilityQuotes.com today. You can email info@DrDisabilityQuotes.com, or you can call 973-771-9100. All right, so our subject today for this new year is the 10 biggest financial mistakes that doctors make. And I see these made repeatedly, over and over and over again, and they're probably the most impactful financial mistakes that we see doctors make. So let's talk about these. The first one is making a bad career decision. Maybe you went into medicine you shouldn't have. Maybe you chose the wrong specialty for you. I empathize with these docs because it's very hard to know at 22 what you want to do with your life or what you'll even be like at 42. But obviously, this can be a major financial catastrophe. There's a question on the Bogleheads forum recently. Said, I'm currently a practicing surgeon with a relatively busy academic practice with teaching and clinical care I enjoy, although the admin can be painful sometimes. During the shutdowns, I was grateful to have meaningful work to go into every day while I watch family and friends work from home. That's why I might be a little crazy for thinking about this opportunity, but it is a unique one that has come across my desk. A headhunter for a large pharmaceutical company has reached out to me to ask if I'd be interested in working in medical affairs for them full time. I've done minor consulting, but this would be a full-time 9-to-5 job starting virtually for at least the first year. I'm at a stage in my career. This is kind of a big fork in the road moment for me. I would appreciate any thoughts or recommendations from MDs. The salary is comparable to what I make now as a surgeon, plus stock options. My clinical practice has gotten a little stale, and this may demand more creativity and a different skill set from me. Surgery has already started to take a toll on my body in my mid-30s. I have neck and back pain that I do extensive stretching yoga for, but the wear and tear is already building. Shoot, this is a surgeon in his mid-30s. I mean, do you even get out of residency before your mid-30s when you're going into surgery? How long can you have possibly been in practice at this point if you're in your mid-30s? And at least having physical, if not mental burnout from the career. When I see somebody wanting to change careers in their 30s, it makes you wonder if maybe it wasn't the right career choice in the first place. And I don't want to particularly criticize this doc because this happens all the time. But if you chose something that you don't actually want to do for most of your life, that can be a rather large financial mistake. Now, obviously, he's got enough of a clinical training that now he's quite valuable as a non-clinician, and so he'll probably be just fine. It sounds like he's being offered, just as much money to do something that's not going to do wear and tear on his body. But it makes you wonder about the career choice. And as far as specialty, well, it's good to consider your pay and your lifestyle and your debt burden when you choose a specialty. The most important financial aspect of specialty choice is how long you can practice it for. You will come out ahead financially if you practice preventive medicine for 30 years versus ENT for 10. And so longevity of career is probably the most important financial decision. So that argues certainly for choosing something that you're going to love doing for a long time. But if you find plastic surgery and family medicine equally challenging and equally fun, then for heaven's sake, choose plastic surgery. You're going to make a lot more money and your life's going to be a lot easier. But for most of us, there was probably one specialty that was head and shoulders above the others and was obviously the choice for you. And doing something else is probably not only a bad career decision, but probably a bad financial decision too. All right, mistake number 2 the doctors make: not paying attention to their debt to income ratio. How much you owe or expect to owe probably should have some effect on how you live your financial life. Maybe that means you find an alternative way to pay for school. You do an MD, PhD, or you join the Health Service Corps or the Indian Health Service, or you take an HPSP scholarship and work in the military for a while, whatever. Maybe it even has a little bearing on your specialty choice, as we discussed above. But most importantly, it should have a huge effect on your job choice after you finish training. If you have massive debt from school, you need to do one of 2 things. Number 1, take a job that's going to qualify for public service loan forgiveness and manage your loans accordingly. Or number 2, take a job that pays more than average for your specialty, maybe well more than average for your specialty. I'm continuously appalled every time I find a doc working part-time or working for 2/3 of what they're worth who's struggling under their student loan burden. They often don't want to relocate to a better paying job or lower cost of living or whatever. They don't even realize that they already made that decision when they decided how much they were going to borrow for school. They already decided that they had to rule out the lower paying jobs in their specialty. Now that decision's just playing out. I mean, did you decide to borrow $650,000 to become a private practice pediatrician? Well, that's when you decided that you're going to live like a resident, not for 2 to 5 years, but for 8 to 10 years. That decision's already been made. Now it's just playing out. So don't try to change it at this point. In addition to just the student loans, too many doctors are way too comfortable with debt. I mean, I run into docs all the time that want to borrow for a car and borrow for another car and borrow for a second home. They're still paying off student loans. Maybe they're still paying off a practice loan. They're actually carrying balances on credit cards. I mean, I know you live on debt during school, and I don't particularly think you ought to feel guilty about doing that as long as you have a plan to take care of it. But that comfort with debt mindset needs to go away when you come out of school. And you need to start living within your means and actually building wealth. And when you are making payments every month with your income, that's your greatest wealth building tool. And you're not going to be able to build much wealth if all of your income is going toward your payments. All right, mistake number 3, failing to insure against financial catastrophe. There are basically 6 financial catastrophes: disability, death, illness, injury, liability, and the loss of expensive property. There are policies available to buy that cover all of these things. And if you're like most docs, you need to buy an insurance policy that'll cover against each one of them. Yet there's docs all over the place who have not yet done so, that are finishing residency or have even been in practice a few years and don't yet have disability insurance. If you're thinking about getting disability insurance as a senior resident, you're already behind the 8 ball. That's something that you should be buying as a intern, really, with your first paycheck. Residents get disabled or become otherwise unable to buy disability insurance all the time. So if you need some help, the sponsor for this episode is Bob Bayani. He does a great job helping docs get disability insurance. If you want to see some of the other people we recommend, you can go to our recommended pages on the website and check out some really great independent insurance agents and get that taken care of. But not doing so is a serious financial catastrophe. It's like the people going bare for malpractice. It's just not a good idea. Buy some malpractice insurance. Not only does it pay for your defense, but it also pays if you lose. It pays the payout. And usually the payouts stay within policy limits if you just buy a freaking policy. All right, mistake number 4. Not paying attention to finances, or at least not paying enough attention. And most of us are guilty of this at some point or other during our careers. A surprising number of doctors are financially illiterate, at least on a functional level. They know nothing about the basic calculations of finance, little about financial history. They don't know any of the terminology, and they can't tell a Bitcoin from a Tesla. They simply are not paying attention. This is like arriving midway through your 4th year of medical school and asking someone, wait, there's a residency match? This is important stuff that you should know about. and be planning for long in advance. Now, you can't know what you don't know, but these are critical life skills, and it's knowledge you need. So pay attention to your finances, become financially literate. Mistake number 5, trusting a money guy. Too many doctors fall in with the salesman masquerading as a financial advisor. Now, you don't have to manage your investments yourself. If you can learn to do so competently, you can probably knock 2 or 3 years off your career, off your journey to financial independence. But you don't have to. And I bet about 80% of doctors don't even want to. What you can't do, however, is hire a bad financial advisor, someone who does not give good advice or who charges too much for good advice. Many doctors, if you ask them, will list this as one of their biggest mistakes. If you need help knowing what a good financial advisor looks like, we've got a recommended page at the White Coat Investor that you can go in and look at financial advisors and what good ones look like. Now, whether you choose one of those or not, and of course they all advertise with us, but whether you choose one of those or not, at least you'll know what you're looking for when you go looking for a financial advisor. You're looking for fee-only, fiduciary, competent, experienced folks. Okay, mistake number 6, not having a written financial plan. Now, sometimes that comes from not having a financial planner, but whether you use one or not, you need a written financial plan. I've accomplished many goals in my life, both financial and otherwise, but it's very rare that I accomplish one without writing it down and making specific, concrete plans to achieve it. The greatest financial task of your life is to save up enough money to support you in retirement. Don't you think it's worth maybe doing a little planning toward that goal? I think it is. If you still don't have a financial plan and you don't feel competent to write it yourself, you got 2 choices. I mentioned the financial planners above. You can also take our Fire Your Financial Advisor course. It's a sweet little online course that you come out of at the end not only being financially literate and knowing everything you need to know if you choose to interact with the financial services industry, but with a written financial plan that you can follow to investing success. And I think it's a really important part of your financial education is actually writing down your plan. Okay, number 7. Inadequate investment discipline. While a far more common error is to have no plan at all, even if you have a plan, it's still critical that you actually follow it, particularly in a downturn. Every day there's going to be temptations to deviate from your plan, to sell low, to chase performance, to continuously tweak the plan, etc. All those changes tend to lead to significant investment underperformance. And I get your emails all the time. I just got one from someone today that talked about all the changes he made to his portfolio in 2020. And he admits at the end, I shouldn't have done any of these. I should have just stayed the course with the reasonable plan I had at the beginning of the year. But he felt like he had to make changes. And every one of them just about cost him money. By the end of the year, he was day trading in his account. And so you just can't do that. You need a plan, yes, but you also have to follow it. So have some discipline. Okay, error number 8. You don't save enough money. The median American has a net worth, excluding home equity, of just $29,000. Why is that? It's because they don't save any money, right? I'm not talking about the homeless dude living in a tent downtown. I'm not talking about your neighbor's disabled adult child. I'm not talking about somebody living on $15,000 a year as a part-time restaurant server. I'm talking about the median American. This person has a household income of $60,000 to $70,000, but a net worth of just $29,000. Why is that person so poor on such a great income? Well, there's only one reason. They don't save a significant portion of that income and invest it in some reasonable way. Most doctors, however, are exactly the same, just with a higher income. 25% of doctors in their 60s are not millionaires, including their home equity, including everything. And 11 to 12% have a net worth under $500,000. So doctors are not immune to this. They don't build wealth commensurate with their income either. If you want to grow wealth, you will need to learn to save money. You got to spend less than you earn. It's rule number 1. If you want to help your family, if you want to support charity, if you want to have nice stuff, if you want to find a great work-life balance, you need to save some money. I tell attendings the minimum is 20% of their gross income for retirement. Other savings, you want to save up for a Tesla or a down payment, or you want to save up for your children's college, that's all above and beyond that. You want to pay off your student loans or you want to pay off your mortgage early, that's above and beyond that 20%. 20% is for retirement. You know what? If you're only putting 5% toward retirement, don't be surprised when you can't retire at 65. You just don't have enough money to do it. And here you are working night shifts at age 70 or taking hospitalist call or whatever you have to do because of that. All right, number 9, leaving money on the table. About a quarter of physicians left medical school without having any idea of how much they would make in their chosen specialty. No idea whatsoever. Never saw a salary survey as a student, never talked to an attending about what they make, nothing. So is it any wonder that they subsequently take jobs that pay much less than the average job in their specialty? Have your contract reviewed by a professional, whether it's a national contract review service, whether it is a healthcare attorney in your state, have it reviewed. Know what you're worth. Don't be afraid to negotiate. You're not willing to work for free. I know because I survey you. When I survey you anonymously, none of you are willing to work for free. Okay, about 2% of you are, but almost none of you are willing to work for free. It's called work because someone has to pay you to do it. So if you're going to do it, make sure you're paid fairly to do so, i.e. paid the average wage for your specialty or better. Why be in the lower half? You haven't been in the lower half your entire life. So unless it's a really special job in a really special place, I sure wouldn't work for less than the median income in my specialty. All right, number 10. Thinking other people care about your spending decisions. Too many of us spend money to buy things we don't want to impress people we don't care about. Stop doing that. Your patients don't care what you drive. Your neighbors don't care where you vacation. Your coworkers don't care where you shop for clothes or whether you eat organic food. How do I know? Well, do you care about what your doctor drives? How about where your neighbors go on vacation or what the labels on your coworkers' clothes are? You don't care? Weird. Neither does anyone else. We just don't care. So stop acting and spending like they do. They simply don't. So those are your 10 biggest financial mistakes that doctors make. Make sure you're not making any of them. And you know what? If you can avoid those, you're going to have a wonderful life. You're going to have a great career. You're going to feel financially remunerated, financially paid well for it. And you're not going to have financial concerns if you can just avoid those mistakes. You know, so often we think we got to get everything right with our finances, but you really don't. You just got to avoid the big screw ups. Obviously, we can add a few more to that list, right? You could add buying whole life insurance, or you could add having a divorce or something like that to the list. But I think those are probably the 10 biggest that we needed to talk about today. So let's take some of your questions. Let's take a question off the speak pipe. This one is from JD, who's doing a postdoc fellowship.
Dr. Dolly, I'm an internist by training in current addiction medicine and general internal medicine fellow doing a postdoctoral research fellowship. I'd like your advice on how to best handle moonlighting income. I'm on a T32 training grant, which provides just about $59,000, and my division provides an extra $5,000 salary annually. I'm planning for an academic career and I'm working towards public service loan forgiveness. Due to COVID, I've worked a lot during the last 2 surges and estimate that I'll make an extra $60,000 moonlighting this year. I'm married with 2 kids and my wife makes $90,000 a year. We file as married filings separately to decrease my income-based loan repayment. My institution has a 403B and I contribute all of the $5,000 salary to it. We are not allowed to contribute the T32 training grant, nor the moonlighting income, which is characterized as supplemental income, into the 403B. I have 1 more year on my T32. Do you have any ideas on how to contribute this extra income into a tax-deferred account to lower my AGI and provide my family a little catch-up on savings? Thanks for all that you do.
All right, JD's making $64,000 a year plus $60,000 moonlighting. His wife's making $90,000 a year. Pretty good household income there. He's an academic going for public service loan forgiveness, doing the complicated little married filing separately with pay to try to maximize that, and wants to contribute more money to tax-deferred accounts. Well, that's a noble goal, right? You want to maximize your forgiveness in order to, so you want to minimize your taxable income to do that. So if the moonlighting income is paid on a 1099, you're technically have your own business. So you could open an individual 401k and do some tax-deferred employer contributions there, about 20% of the profit of that business, of that 1099 pay. Maybe if you have a high deductible health plan, you didn't say, you could also do an HSA. But that's about it. You've kind of already optimized this as best you can. So your additional money needs to go toward other goals, maybe paying off your private student loans, maybe paying off a mortgage, paying off any other debts you have, into Roth IRAs via the back door if you haven't done that, or even in a taxable account. You can always invest more in a taxable account. All right, let's do our quote of the day today. This is from Phil DeMuth, PhD. If you are looking for an investment advisor, make sure you find them. Don't let them find you. The people who find you will be the wrong people. And I certainly agree with that. Okay, our next question off the speak pipe comes from Joe. Let's take a listen.
Hey, Dr. Dolly. This is Joe with a question for you about investing income from rental properties. So I recently got bit by the real estate bug, bought my first rental property, and I'm now having income from my tenants. I opened up an LLC, opened up a savings and checking account in the name of the LLC. I deposit the checks in there, and the money's starting to add up. And now I'm asking myself, what are my options for creating a retirement account for this LLC? Do I open up a solo 401k? Do I open up a SEP IRA? Is it as easy as just taking the money that's been deposited from my tenants' checks and taking it from the checking account and putting it into a solo 401k after I open it up? I'm a bit ignorant in this process. Any advice that you might be able to offer would be greatly appreciated. Thanks for all that you do.
Okay, how should you invest income from rental properties? What are your options? Can you stick the money in a retirement account? Well, no. Rental income is not earned income, so it can't go into a retirement account. It's not used to calculate anything to do with retirement accounts, so that's not an option. You could use that income to pay off the mortgage. You can use it to invest in mutual funds in a taxable account, or perhaps most commonly among real estate investors, use it to buy another property. You save it up and you buy another property. That's pretty common as well. So lots of things you can do with that money. It's great to have that income. Congratulations on that. But one thing you can't do with it is stick it in a retirement account. Now, if you have a retirement account available to you for other work you're doing, money's fungible. You can live off the rental income and use that earned income to go into the retirement account. But you can't just open a SEP IRA because you own a rental property. Sorry. Of course, if you can achieve real estate professional status, maybe that's not necessarily the case, right? Maybe then it's considered income for your real estate business and earned income in that way. I'll have to look into that a little more carefully, but that might be an option. But for the most part, rental income isn't earned income and can't go into a retirement account. All right, this one comes in via email. Really appreciate your work. You're a truly amazing resource for our family. Just listened to your podcast with Morgan Housel. Really good and thought-provoking. Thank you. Appreciate your kind words. I've passed CFA level 1 and a CFP and have an MBA. Wow, that's pretty good. But for good or bad, nothing shapes my investment outlook like my experience living and visiting 100 plus countries over the years. Whether it was living in Japan when the Nikkei was at 39,000 and watching it go to 8,000, or living in Argentina around 2005, seeing middle-class families pick through the garbage. Or now observing college-educated Venezuelans arrive in Buenos Aires with only the shirt on their back. Nothing haunts me more than Rwanda and how peaceful neighbors started attacking each other, how they assumed the Americans, Europeans would come in and save them from the craziness. The museum there details Clinton's regret for not helping. I can't tell if you're just really well-traveled or if you somehow keep ending up living in the worst place in the world at any given time. Goes on, saying, anyway, thinking of Morgan's social media comments, today's political environment, and the USA deficit and QE issues, and reading your forums, I think your readers, rightfully so, have been extremely US dollar-centric and should diversify and consider international real estate as part of their backup plan. Obviously, a possible place where one has some kind of a personal connection. Aleppo was a beautiful, prosperous place a short time ago. Those in Syria who owned something outside the country had options. Seems to me having a small condo overseas, even Canada, wouldn't be the worst diversification idea for obvious reasons. The time to do something like this is well in advance, even if it ends up only benefiting one's children. Of course, the odds say that America will continue on without major problems, but if things fall apart, I think it may happen quickly. Okay, I get a lot of interesting ideas like this emailed to me or whatever on forums, and this is actually one of the more reasonable ones. And I suppose an argument can be made for a condo in Asia or in Canada, maybe keeping a few $1,000s in yen or euros, a few gold coins, and maybe even a few Bitcoin around as some sort of an insurance policy against that sort of thing. But there's at least 4 good reasons to tilt toward the US and the dollar for me. Number 1, I'll almost surely be spending dollars in retirement. So adding currency risk to the mix brings on an additional risk that I don't necessarily need in my life. Number 2, the U.S. has had some of the best returns during its existence, and there's really little to argue that that long-term trend is likely to dramatically change. That doesn't mean international won't perform U.S. over the next 10 years. In fact, I'd probably bet it will if I had to put money on the table. But in the long run, I expect U.S. returns to continue to be good. There are a lot of wonderful things about the U.S. that are pretty unique to it. Number 3, the U.S. has some investor and private property protections that are not available in all places. The simple fact is we're not Rwanda, we're not Venezuela, we never have been, and we're unlikely to ever become so. Number 4, there's a lot of hassle involved in directly owning overseas investments or property. But a reasonable person can hedge their bets a bit. Like I said, you want to buy a little gold or a few euros or a Bitcoin or two. You like Toronto and you want to get a condo up there. That's not crazy if you have the money to afford it. I've got a third of my stock in international companies, even though I expect to spend dollars in retirement. So it's okay to hedge your bets a little bit, but don't go crazy worried about some crazy meltdown scenario that is unlikely to happen and have your entire portfolio in guns, ammo, and Bitcoin. All right. So if you don't know about it, we have WCICon 21 coming up. This is a live but virtual event. We're going to keep you 100% safe from COVID during this event. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be March 4th through 6th. We've got way more content than any WCICon that we've ever had before. We're going to have some sweet keynote speakers. We've got Christine Benz and Alan Roth and Mike Piper coming. We're going to have some great panels. It's really going to be good. But you want to sign up by the 5th of January. Because if you sign up by the 5th of January, not only do you get all that awesome content, including the CME that comes with it, I think it's going to be about 17 hours of CME, but you also get the swag bag mailed out to you. If you sign up on January 6th, we're not sending you a swag bag. So you got kind of a deadline there. January 5th, get signed up. It's going to be awesome. You can use CME dollars to pay for it. If you're self-employed, you can write it off as a business expense, and you get the cool swag bag with books from these authors, book from me, WCI t-shirt, all kinds of other stuff from the sponsors. It's going to be great. All right, let's take a question off the speak pipe from David.
Hey, Jim, would California long-term and intermediate-term municipal bond funds be substantially different enough to avoid the wash rule? Thank you very much.
All right, so it sounds like David's tax loss harvesting is the impression I'm getting. He's asking if California long and medium-term bond funds are substantially identical. Well, no, they're not. Certainly not in the eyes of the IRS. These are very different investments. So if you want to exchange them, you can. But they're also significantly different. I might first look, if you're exchanging out of a medium-term California bond fund from Vanguard or something, I might look and see if there isn't one from Fidelity to exchange into. Because those are pretty substantially different investments. The idea is to choose something that's not, in the words of the IRS, substantially identical, but is actually substantially identical, right? You want it to have a high correlation with another investment. But if you, for instance, exchange from a medium-term to a long-term bond fund, and that month interest rates went through the roof and that long-term bond fund just got hammered, then you're going to be bummed because you're not owning something you meant to own in the long run just to book a tax loss. And so, yes, to answer your question, you could exchange them. I'm not sure it's a great idea. The good news is you usually don't have very dramatic losses to exchange in bond funds. Usually when you're doing tax loss harvesting, you're doing it with stock funds because they tend to be more volatile and go up and down quite a bit more. I can't imagine you have some huge bond loss in a long or medium-term bond fund, at least at the time that I'm recording this. Interest rates have been coming down. You should have gains on most of those things. Okay, next question is Dean from the Upper Midwest. I think Dean's called us before, but let's listen to this new question.
Hello, Jim. This is Dean from the Upper Midwest. My financial plan has mostly focused on accumulation phase strategy with index fund investing and tax-efficient fund placement up to this point. Quick background, I am in my late 40s and may retire in about 10 to 12 years. My taxable account, which will probably be about 2/3 of my portfolio at retirement, is mostly in equity funds and already has significant unrealized capital gains. My tax-deferred account will be about 20% and is essentially comprised of bond funds. The rest is Roth IRA and HSA. So my question has to do with retirement planning and more specifically withdrawal strategy. I believe that I would generally want to preferentially tap into our taxable account first. However, I am not sure that tapping into equity funds with large amounts of unrealized capital gains is prudent in retirement. I do plan to increase my overall bond allocation percentage as I near retirement. Should I start placing more bonds into my taxable account when I increase my bond allocation as I approach retirement so I can utilize those for retirement spending? Any other thoughts or strategies on this? Am I overthinking this? Thanks again for all you do. I appreciate it.
Okay, Dean wants to talk about retirement withdrawal strategies. And it's awesome to think about this before you get there, because too many of us just spend time accumulating. And eventually, you're probably going to want to spend some of this money. So as a general rule, yes, you want to spend taxable before tax-protected money. Number one, because it doesn't grow as fast due to the tax drag. But number two, it gets less asset protection from your creditors. That probably won't matter in your life, but if it does, it's a nice extra benefit. It also has some, pretty significant estate planning benefits, like being able to stretch an IRA for 10 years after your death. So especially as an early retiree, it's fine to sell shares in those taxable funds. No big deal. Obviously, your first spending every year is going to come from your dividends, your interest, any required minimum distributions you have to take, any rents you get, Social Security, any other income you have to take. But after that, assuming you want more to spend, you generally sell your high basis shares. Now, most of that high basis share is just return of your principal. You don't owe tax on that. So if you bought something at $90 a share and now it's $100 a share and you sell those shares, 9/10 of that income isn't income. It's not taxable. It's just a return of your principal. You're only taxed on 10% of that. You're only taxed on those gains. And even those, if you've held it at least a year, are only taxed at long-term capital gains rates. So that's a pretty good way to get money. As you near death, however, you might want to think about maybe not cashing out of low basis shares. It can even be smarter sometimes to borrow against them and even pay some interest rather than paying all those long-term capital gains, because your heirs will benefit from the step up in basis at death. But the general rule is taxable first, then you take from your tax deferred up to the top of the nearest tax bracket. And if you want additional income beyond that, you take from your Roth or tax-free accounts. Obviously, any health expenses you have come from an HSA if you have one. And ideally, you try to leave your Roth accounts to your heirs. They'll certainly appreciate it. And if you want to give to charity, leave your tax-deferred accounts to charity. I personally think if you're so inclined to give to charity, you ought to get started while you're still alive. Most of us can certainly afford to give more away than we do. It's a great way to give to charity, just to give your low basis shares from your taxable account. It helps continually flush those low basis shares out of your taxable account so you don't have to pay so many capital gains taxes later. All right, I hope you enjoyed that. This particular episode has been sponsored by Bob Baiani, DrDisabilityQuotes.com, an independent provider of disability insurance for the medical community nationwide, and a longtime sponsor here. He specializes in working with residents and fellows early in their careers to set up sound financial and insurance strategies. If you need to review your coverage, or if you just haven't bought it yet, give Bob a call, 973-771-9100, or just email him, info@drdisabilityquotes.com. Don't forget about WCICon 21. You have till the 5th if you want to get the swag bag, so sign up now. This gives you a chance. If you buy it the day this podcast drops, you can use your 2020 money. If you buy it the next day, you can use your 2021 CME money. Either way, you get a pretty awesome course, essentially at a discount by using your CME money or being able to write it off as a business expense. Thanks to those of you who have left us a 5-star review and told your friends about the podcast. A recent one earlier this year came in from Panda17, who said, "I'm the wife of a doctor. I'm learning a lot. My husband's about to finish up training and is attending Gifted in the White Coat Investor book. After reading it, I've started listening to these podcasts as well. I felt very overwhelmed by the financial world, but these podcasts have been helping me feel competent, so thankful for this amazing resource." You're very welcome. Thanks for the 5-star review. So keep your head up, your shoulders back. You've got this, and we can help. And let's get out there and stay safe. Take care of your family. Take care of your patients. Take care of your finances. And I'll see you next time on the White Coat Investor Podcast.